Okay, so it's April 15, 2023, and I'm just returning from picking up some peat moss for some seeding projects I'm working on this week. It's been really hard to get a hold of peat moss for me this year. One particular Lowe's location that I always go to, they haven't had it several times I've gone in for it. I called another one and they had it, so I went and bought a whole bunch of it, so I have it on hand. I want to talk today briefly about patience and practicing patience with customers. I'm going to give an example of something I went through recently. And you can maybe use it. Maybe it can help you. Maybe, you would do something differently. I mean, you run your own business. You got to do what you want to do. Ironically, I prayed before this sometime in the relatively near past. And I prayed to God. I said, Lord, please help me work on my heart. And help me with patience with my customers and people in general. So I had a long customer, and I wasn't going to go into detail about this, but it's going to be a few minutes long, and I figured why not? I'll just share it. So I signed a customer up back in February for lawn mowing services, lawn applications, and mulch. And the way that my mowing or my mulch and mowing and lawn apps works is like this. When you sign up for a lawn mowing, you pay a $50 deposit. That deposit is applied to your first invoice. On this particular customer's first invoice for mowing, I made an error and didn't include it. Now, it wasn't going to get eternally forgotten about. It would have been added in the next one for certain. But I was in a bit of a hurry one day, which I normally am not. I've had some days like that this year that I'm not used to, where I'm really overwhelmed. So I sent him his first invoice, and I'll get to that in a second. But back on the mulch, they pay a deposit up front on the mulch, with the remaining balance being paid and due the day that the mulch work is done. And if that payment isn't received, then the $100 discount that I quote them at is removed from the total balance, meaning that it's $100 more than originally estimated. And it's included in the estimate. It's a same-day discount when they pay it the same day. And then there are lawn apps, and I bill up front for the lawn apps, so I had the money to be able to buy the product while it's available, because there have been shortage issues, etc., ever since COVID-19 and the Ukraine war, etc. So he pays for the lawn apps, he pays for his deposit for the mowing, he pays for the mulch. Mulch job came, and he's asking me a lot of times, when are you going to be there? What time are you going to be there? I want to be there. It's for my daughter's home. I explained to him up front that I run what I call a floating schedule, meaning whoever signs up is next in line. Whoever signs up next is next in line, instead of a hard schedule where I would have actual dates. And I did that many years ago. I changed over because it might rain on a given day. And with a hard schedule, the next date I have available is 2 weeks down the road. That's not really fair to the customer. And I wouldn't be happy as a customer, so I run a floating schedule. We work outside. We don't work in someone's house. You don't have to be present for us to be able to do the job. And I explain this to my customers up front. So if you want a general idea, I can tell you, but I don't even like to give times, because when we arrive at the farm in the morning, there could be 5 or 6 trucks ahead of us in line to be loaded by the loader. And there was one particular time the gal that runs the loader and runs the office locked herself out of the office. So it was delayed a long time getting mulch, by about 45 minutes. And if I give you a time and I'm not there, I start getting phone calls. Where are you at? When are you going to be here? Or text messages. And text messages under those circumstances are just difficult to deal with, because they might be getting aggravated and you don't know it. Or you got to be very sensitive, especially in today's environment anyway, but especially in a text. There's no body language, there's no tone, there's no tempo. If the guy's having a bad day when he's messaging, he might be more apt to read receive the message negatively. So we got his mulch taken care of, and he was just texting, etc. Well, his daughter has an autistic child. So they have 2 real locks on 2 of the gates in the backyard, and one has a fake lock, which doesn't make any sense to me, but fine, whatever. And to open it, you pull on the lock, and then you open the lock up, and then you push the gate open. Well, the first time one of my guys went there to cut the grass, he couldn't get the gate open. So he went and he talked to the lady. She came around and opened it for him. No problem. Second time he goes to mow the grass, she's not home when he goes around to get her. So we didn't get the backyard cut. So within a week, he messages me, what's the problem? I explained to you how to open this. He's being just very direct and to the point. That might be how he is, and that's fine. And I explained to him, well, my guy went around, to have her help him with the lock because he couldn't get it to work the previous time, and she opened it for him, but the last time she wasn't there. He said, I've explained to you, and he's talking to me via text, how to do this. It's very easy. You push the gate open. It's a fake lock. Well, first of all, no. And then later he sends me a message. Well, you don't push the gate open. You release the lock, and then you remove the lock, and then you push the gate open. That's the actual sequence. So he says, he was upset. I said, look, it doesn't matter, sir. We're going to get it caught up for you next week. Now that you sent me a video, I can be more descriptive to my guys about it. It won't be an issue moving forward. So 6 weeks down the road, we've mowed 6 weeks for him. So I send him an invoice, and he responds. This is on a Monday. This is not correct. You did not apply the deposit, which I hadn't. And again, it wouldn't have been eternally missed. It just happened to be missed this particular time because I was in a hurry that day when I was sending out messages. I've just been overwhelmed at times this spring as I've growing pains. You do it for 17 years, and that's going to happen. So I send it back to him. And then part of his complaint was, hey, well, you didn't cut the backyard this week. Well, no, sir, we didn't cut the backyard that week. Obviously, we couldn't get into it. I said, but we don't double charge when we catch it up the next week as a result. So, I won't send a different invoice with a reduced rate for that week because, number one, we don't do that. Because the next week, I'm just going to send you an increased invoice to match the difference in the previous week because we caught it up. And this isn't something that's been habitually happening, okay? We're talking about a one-time issue. So anyway, he's like, okay. He's like, well, when you send that updated invoice to me, I'll pay it promptly. So this is a guy telling me, always asking about dates and times. He's a very punctual person. That's fine. I don't like to do that. It's not how I operate. Again, we're not working in your house. We're working outside. But fine, whatever. Well, I send him the invoice the same day. He gets it the same day. I can see on QuickBooks, but he doesn't make the payment. And the way he has routinely made his payments up to this point is via Zelle. Doesn't send me a payment via Zelle. Says in his email he'll get it paid to me promptly. Behaves in such a way that, he always wants to know the time, etc. He's, really on to doing things right away. I don't get an email stating that he's going to pay another method, that he's mailed a check. So come Friday, we hadn't mowed his grass just yet, even though he got the invoice on Monday. I had decided that we were going to put a hold on his lawn because we were in it for 6 yards or 6 cuts. I don't know if he's upset. He had a little bit of a tone with me when he was communicating with me before via text. So I'm like, well, maybe this guy, I just have to be careful around him, and kind of pussyfoot around things, so to speak, so he doesn't get offended. So Friday came, and I had decided we're going to hold off on mowing anymore until I get a payment from him. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for the time being, and if he makes a payment, I'll get out there the next day and I'll cut the grass. So he calls me, and he's like, what's going on? My grass hasn't been cut. And I'm like, well, sir, we haven't got your payment, and you said you were sending it promptly. And then he starts getting upset with me. I can tell by his tone, by the tempo and the speed of his voice, his sarcasm, his smart aleckness. And he says Jesus Christ a couple of times. I cut him off immediately, and I'm calm the whole time. And I'm just like, sir, Jesus has nothing to do with this. He does it again. I said, hold on. I said, Jesus has nothing to do with this. And he apologizes. And he goes on about his complaints. You're holding me hostage, all this stuff. I'm like, no. And I explained to him what I just explained a second ago. I said, I can get someone over there right away after you make your payment. Well, he goes on, and finally the conversation ends. He was pushing me. A younger me would have went off, would have probably cussed back at him. He didn't cuss at me, but would have cussed at him, would have matched the intensity of his sarcasm and his smart aleckness and his rudeness. But I didn't. I was calm. I didn't talk over him. I realized as I was going through it, I felt like I was being tested, sincerely. But what was ironic about all this is that I had prayed recently beforehand. I said, God, I said, please help to soften my heart in my day-to-day life. Help me to grow with patience. And got me to thinking, when we pray to God for that, do we get patience just magically given to us? Or do we get opportunities where we learn to become patient? A professional athlete that goes into the NFL doesn't become a professional quarterback right away. He's got to work on things, and he learns through playing through different situations. That's how he becomes a better player. So I was happy about that whole situation because I handled it really well. Again, he was being very rude with me, very short, very sarcastic, and I just was very calm. got through it. And I remember, I was even thinking to myself as it was happening, it's like, I prayed for this, for these opportunities. And here I have an opportunity to practice being patient with somebody. And he was ultimately just really upset because the grass was tall. And this time of the year, when the grass gets any amount of height to it, it starts to show seed because it's going to seed out. Now, their lawn isn't very thick. His daughter's lawn isn't very thick. So there was no clumping or anything. It cut very clean. And I messaged him the second I got it cut down for him as I promised him I would. And he was calm. But before I got to mow it, he sent me an ultimatum. It needs to be cut by this time tomorrow. And I responded, sir, I don't give time guarantees. I said, but I'll get over there. I'll get it cut. And I'll give you a message when it gets cut. And, you get these opportunities to come, but I wanted to share that with you. Sometimes you could be tempted to really want to give it to a customer, but maybe instead of doing that, you use it if you have an issue with being patient with these types of ridiculous situations, which are hard to be patient under. Maybe if you just work during those times, you'll find that you can become more patient. It reminds me when I was younger and I worked in a gym, and I hired one of my friends to help me at the front desk, and a guy came into the gym to get in, and for whatever reason, his membership card wasn't working or whatever, and he starts yelling at my guy. And my guy just stopped. He looked at him and said, sir, there's no reason to yell and scream. I'm not yelling at you. You don't have to get all upset. We can get this resolved today, as I mentioned. And that guy went from up here, all of a sudden down here. He just went from 6th gear to 1st gear. And it's amazing what you can do speaking to customers with being polite, by being patient and slowing down the tempo, the speed of the conversation, and just being very calm. I hope this helps you, man. You're going to have situations like this. I hope you can use this. I hope this example helps you in situations that are inevitably going to happen. We're in the service industry. We deal with a lot of people. The more people we deal with, the higher the probability that we're going to deal with people with personality conflicts or who just operate in ways that we're not used to or that we don't prefer. Anyway, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Peace.